Talk to me about this profile of anyone being hypnotizable versus specific people being more or less likely to respond. Are there some total non-responders? Or there's some
There
people,
are.
right?
That's right. Hypnotizability is a very stable trait. Most 8-year-olds are in trances most of the time. You call your kid in for dinner, he doesn't hear you. He's work and play are all the same thing. It's a wonderful thing about being a child. It's a shame we have to grow up. But as we go through adolescence, we develop what is called formal operations. We begin to value thinking and analysis more than immediate experience. And that's got real advantages. You can judge and evaluate things. But so by the time people get to 21 or so, they've settled into a very stable degree of hypnotizability, from low to medium to high. And Phil Zimbardo, a late psychology professor at Stanford, did an interesting study where he took his former undergrads in Psych 1 who had had their hypnotizability measured and blindly went out and retested them 25 years later. The retest correlation was 0.7.
Wow.
Now, that's as high as IQ in a 25-year interval. It does not change much. So, I have seen some of the great hypnotists and hypnotic professionals work for a long time with someone who is just not hypnotizable, and it doesn't matter. They just cannot respond. And so the way I start every session of about 7,000 people I've used hypnosis with in my career, with a 5-minute evaluation of their hypnotizability. And that guides me in how to work with them. So if they're extremely high, we just do it. I had a woman who was born with esophageal fistula to her trachea. And so it meant, food would get into her lungs, and it was painful. She's had multiple surgeries, and she's had pain in her throat throughout her life. And she was about 39, and she just had it. And I got her hypnotized. She was 10 on the scale, 10 out of 10. Extraordinarily hypnotizable, hands floating up in the air. I had her imagine that she had swallowed some ice water and had soothed her throat. And she opened her eyes and she started to cry, and she said, "You're a magician." She said, "I have never been to a doctor where the pain just plain went away. And this was not medication. It wasn't surgery. It was just teaching her brain how to respond to those signals differently." So with highs, you can do that dramatic stuff. With mid-range people, you negotiate more. You teach them how to try it out, evaluate how it went, see if there are ways that they can find a better image that might work better for them. So it's a negotiation process. With lows, it's much more cognitive. It's just, your brain is reacting to this history of discomfort that you've had, and it may be making it worse instead of better. So if instead of fighting the pain, you take it as a message, you got the message, and what else can you do that will distract you?
Sounding, for the lows, it's sounding suspiciously close to acceptance and commitment therapy.
There's a bit of that in it, but for highs, ACT is just a diversion. They can do it in minutes and feel it.
Yeah. Wow. What does the assessment look like for that? How do you work it? Out?
It's a standard hypnotic induction. I have people look up, close their eyes, take a deep breath, let their hand go up in the air, and I give them this instruction. Your hand will remain light and in this upright position. Even after you open your eyes, if I pull your hand back down, it will float right back up to the upright position. You'll find something pleasant and amusing about this. Later, when I touch your elbow, your usual sensation and control will return. And I see how well then they respond to that. And we rate them on the sense of dissociation. Does the left hand feel as if it's not as much a part of their body as the right? On their response to a challenge, where you pull the hand down and see if it floats up.
Mm-hmm.
On a sense of involuntariness. Crucial question. Do you feel more control over one hand than the other? And if they're hypnotizable, they tend to feel more control in the non-hypnotized hand. Then response to the cutoff signal when I touch the elbow. And so it's 2 points for each of these. And then 2 points for whether they had a sense of floating lightness or buoyancy in their hand alone or in their body as well. And so you get a 10-point score, and it's very stable, reliable measure.
What I'm interested in is what are the sort of people who tend to be 10s, 6s, 4s, and 0s or 1s can you see when somebody walks in, or if you were given a profile of somebody beforehand, high-powered chief operations officer, very logistical and rational, is it less likely that that person's going to be high in hypnotizability compared with the artsy, creative person who comes in with dyed hair and tattoo? You know what I mean? Like
that, you're right, and there's some truth to that. I mean, you can miss sometimes, but yes, in general, people who are organized, who want to have things just the way they need to be, tend to be less hypnotizable. I had a guy recently who had had bad lower back problems and pain in his knees, and was but a very sort of rational. He went to 1 million doctors and nothing seemed to work, and they took X-rays and they didn't see anything definitive, but there may be things wrong. And routinely I asked, what's your handedness? Are you right or left-handed? Tough question. And he said, well, I'm right-handed, but I always want my left hand to be equally active. So I always use my left hand the same way just after I use my right hand. So like a real simple question, what handedness do you have? And he had to analyze that too.
Yeah.
And he was a 0, like flat out 0. And I said that to him. He came to me for hypnosis. And I said, I think your problem is that you make everything a problem. You worry about everything, including whether you're right or left-handed. And I think your doctors have been telling you there's nothing that wrong with your bones and your joints, and you keep worrying about it. And he looked sort of relieved. I thought he'd get mad at me. He said, Doc, all the doctors I've seen, you're the first one who's told me that, and I think you're right. And so I said, the problem is the signal is weak, but your elaboration of the signal is high. So just think about other things than that.
So you've had to go top down, not bottom up with him because he's a 0.
That's right. That's right.
So it's much closer to ACT or to CBT or something than to hypnosis.
But it's also, focus on what you're for, not what you're against. Don't fight it. We say with hypnosis, the worst thing you can tell someone is don't think about purple elephants. What are you going to think about? So instead, you find a strategy that's appealing, that they can affiliate with and feel good about from the moment they do it. Mm-hmm. For mid-range people, it's more try it and let's discuss it. It's kind of, they have I do feel somewhat better. I had a pianist, a guy who was a professional pianist, but to make a living, the saying about the difference between a musician and a pizza. A pizza can feed an average family of 4. And so he had a day job in construction, and he'd gotten himself injured and had a lot of pain. And it got to where he couldn't, manage the pedals on the piano well, and it was really awful for him. And but he was frustrated. He was mid-range in hypnotizability, frustrated that he kept getting distracted from his favorite thing, which was to play. So I had him hypnotized, and I said, your body is floating cool and comfortable, and I want you to play air piano for me. So he's there hypnotized. He's playing. He says, I can actually enjoy this. This is good. I wrote this song. I really like this. And he reduced his pain from 5 to like 2 to 3. And so it was a sort of negotiation with him, trying out different things and doing it. And with the highs, it's like that lady with the throat and trachea problem. She just did it. She cool, tingling, and numb. It's gone. She did it.
Before we continue, if you haven't been feeling as sharp or energized as you'd like, getting your blood work done is the best place to start, which is why I partnered with Function, because they run lab tests twice a year that monitor over 100 biomarkers. They've got a team of expert physicians that take the data, put it in a simple dashboard, and give you actionable insights and recommendations to improve your health and lifespan. They track everything from your heart health to your hormone levels, your thyroid function, and nutrient deficiencies. They even screen for 50 types of cancer at stage 1, which is 5 times more data than you get from an annual physical. Getting your blood work drawn and analyzed like this would usually cost thousands, but with Function, it is only $500. And right now, the first 1,000 people can get an additional $100 off, meaning it's only $400 to get the exact same blood panel that I use. Just go to the link in the description below or head to functionhealth.com/modern wisdom. That's functionhealth.com/modern wisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, you will love the full-length episode available right here.